Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Jackson, and today I have a very special guest, Sedona Mayor Scott Jablow. Welcome, Mayor Jablow. Really appreciate having you.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me.
So, there are so many questions I want to ask you, questions that go well beyond the time we have, questions about how it's been like being mayor, a bunch of issues in Sedona, but we just don't have time for that. Hopefully, we will another day. So today I want to talk about one thing, one very focused thing, which is this proposed Sedona ordinance for off-highway vehicles. That's what I want to talk about, and it's right off the back of a May 23rd City Council meeting that you held with the City Council to talk about a proposed ordinance. And before we get into the actual ordinance, one of the things I wanted to sort of help our viewers understand and think through is some concepts that are unclear to many people, and specifically this definition of off-highway vehicle. I mean, many people think of, well, it goes into the forest. Well, there's all kinds of vehicles that do that. There's pink Jeep, there's passenger trucks like Silverados, there's ATVs that have the handlebars, and they're allowed. There's side-by-side UTVs that are allowed. There's campers, there's the van lifers. All these different vehicles that go into the forest are all what, generically you could call off-highway vehicles. And so really the question is, just for the listeners, when you are talking about this ordinance and talking about off-highway vehicles, what are you talking about, all those kind of vehicles, or what specific kind of vehicles are you talking about?
Well, and it is very confusing, and I understand that, but there's always been a problem with noise and mufflers and dust and degradation of the Forest Service for years. And that's a whole discussion for another day, but that has nothing to do with our ordinance and what we're looking at. I'm responsible, as well as the other 6 councilors on the Sedona City Council, responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of our residents and those that travel through the city. So I learned a few months ago that OHVs, off-highway vehicles, have their own designation from the federal DOT, Department of Transportation, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And it seems that, and this ordinance started, and the interest started with tires, because we first learned that the tires of only OHVs have their own designation from that says off-highway use or something along those lines. And then we found out that the tire manufacturers themselves, Green Ball is one tire manufacturer that was putting DOT on their tire. And they were reprimanded by the federal DOT for doing that because it was a misconception. And they were told not to do that because their tires for, what I should say, the tires for OHVs only were never tested on paved public roads, but they were tested for off-highway. And there's 2 different types of surfaces. So when you stop on a gravel dirt road, you need to know that it's going to grab. But evidently, those tires are not tested and approved for multi-surface paved highways. Like,
Is this though for UTVs? My understanding is it's primarily the UTVs, the ATVs, and the things like Jeeps and passenger trucks.
No, they're fine. They were tested and approved.
Okay, so it's pretty much ATVs and UTVs. Is that really the primary focus of?
Yes, and okay. OHVs. And there's sometimes it's synonymous.
Or OHVs, is that, I guess, so OHV, so that's so even now as a confusion.
Right.
When you say OHV, do you mean UTV, ATV, Jeep?
No, I'm talking about not the ones with the handlebars, the ones that steer.
Okay, this UTVs, the one with the multi-seater side-by-sides.
Correct.
Okay.
And sometimes 4-seaters.
And the 4-seaters, yep.
So, but because it's getting so muddy into the tires, I did a little bit of digging, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission and the federal DOT have not certified them because they were never tested. because they never came up with a test. The tire manufacturers never came up with a test that could, for those tires, test them and certify that they're safe. So until they could turn around and say that they're safe, they're not approved for paved public roads.
So
That's
are
where
these UTVs not even, I mean, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is these UTVs are not even subject to federal motor vehicle safety standards because they're supposed to be off roads. They're not even part of the set of vehicles that are tested for federal motor vehicle safety.
Now, that's my understanding.
Okay.
And no one's been able to tell me I'm wrong.
Right.
Okay. But it is muddy, and I get that. And the OHV companies here are stepping up to the plate and saying, we can get other tires that will fit those rims. That's fine. If they can, that's okay. But the vehicles themselves are not certified by the federal DOT to be on the road.
Okay.
If that works out, that's fine. I want to make sure that vehicles are safe on our roads. But then we come to learn that they're also not allowed and safe and certified because they don't have other safety requirements that your car, my car, a truck would have. They don't have anti-lock brakes, which is critical. They don't have crumple zones, and they don't have airbags. Now, one may say, what difference does it make? Well, quite honestly, the anti-lock brakes affect you and me and anybody traveling on the road. Okay, we're going to take them separately. So the anti-lock brakes, so we have monsoon here. We have unscheduled rain here. And if somebody is coming back or going to the forest and the monsoon hits and we have now slick roads, and for whatever reason, somebody goes to hit the brakes, that vehicle will not behave the same as what a sedan or even a Jeep or a Dodge Wrangler, any of those are designed to respond. Okay. So we know that anti-lock brakes, all four wheels will lock up and release on their own as needed until they gain traction. These will not. The OHVs, now I don't know about UTVs and the others, okay? The OHVs will not.
Okay.
That's the key that I'm concerned about. Then there's a question about directional signals.
Right.
Okay. And it's a simple kit. I'm told $40. They could put a directional signal on. That's fine. Do that. Now, I told the story twice now at public meetings. Well, one was a private meeting that you were, in attendance of, that was to the Greater Sedona Recreational Group. And then Tread Lightly, because I wanted to do outreach to hear what they had to say. But going to that meeting that morning, I was cut off by one of the companies here, the OHVs, going to the Y northbound on 179, and somebody cut me off without a directional signal, without a hand signal. So I was able to get next to them, and I noticed that they didn't have a directional signal handle. I said nothing. I went about my business. If I wasn't a proactive driver, I would have been hit, because that's the only section of 179 from Tlaquepaque up to the Y, for those who are watching that know the general geographic area, that is a 2-lane road. So right. I was in the left lane, the OHV was in the right lane, and they just cut right in front of me. That's a problem. But if the OHV companies want to put those on, that's fine too. The other issues are the airbags and crumple zones. Now, that wouldn't affect me because I don't rent one. It wouldn't affect you. It would affect the person who's renting them. And to go back up a little bit, none of them have crumple zones or airbags. None of them are manufactured with them. Okay, but we have many, many rentals here. We have 6 to 8 rental companies, 4 rental companies, 6 to 8 rental storefronts. Somebody comes from anywhere across the country. their sedan, their car, a regular vehicle would have all of those safety features. It's been around for 25 or more years, a requirement by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the federal DOT. Okay. They don't know about a car that doesn't respond. Everybody's had that time when they're driving in the rain, you hit the brakes, your car has anti-lock brakes, you know it responds. Well, they're going to come here knowing what they have to drive back home. They're taking a rental car from whatever airport they landed at and driving to Sedona. Again, it's safe. They're going to rent an OHV or whatever.
Whatever. UTV.
Okay. UTV. And they're not told that their vehicle, one, is not manufactured approved by the federal DOT or the Consumer Product Safety Commission. They're not told, hey, by the way, this vehicle doesn't have anti-lock brakes. If you do get into a front-end accident, you will not have an airbag and you will have a crumple zone. And for those that don't know, crumple zone is where the engine will drop. In a front-end accident, the engine drops from the engine compartment so it doesn't crush your legs. Okay. Which before they had crumple zones was a huge, huge problem where people would be in front-end accidents. They'd severely hurt their legs. So that's part of a normal sedan, a normal passenger car. Even a 4x4 truck has them. Okay. So the rental companies, they're very diligent. There is a video that they have to show that they've agreed of an agreement was come to by Tread Lightly. A year or so ago, they show a great video of what not to do in the forest, and they all show it. And it's a fabulous video. It was funded by the Fish and Game, Arizona Fish and Game. That's all they're given. They are signing a rental agreement, and it's questionable whether anything about the vehicle is in the rental agreement. But who reads the entire rental agreement? You're going to take an hour and read that long contract? Most people don't. Okay. Go ahead.
I mean, so, everyone hears about maybe rollovers in the forest. But even in my own sphere, my experience of the complaints about these OHVs has been the noise, the dust, just the sheer volume of these vehicles on our streets and in the forest. Haven't heard a lot about safety issues on the street. And so the question is, I know at the city council, a lot of the opponents of this safety ordinance said, hey, we don't really have any OHV accidents, so why are you picking on us? And isn't this some sort of backdoor way to actually solve the noise and the dust issue and the volume issue? So how would you respond to that?
Great. And at the same day of that meeting, I received some accident data, which I didn't have the day before. And it wasn't vetted. We didn't even read it. I didn't get a chance to read it. My city attorney didn't get a chance to look it over. But from the Arizona Department of Transportation, ADOT, they publish a website that anybody can go to. And they have the stats. And they come under it's all-terrain vehicles or cycles. Now, it's interesting that it says cycle, which means motorcycle.
Right.
Arizona DOT registers these vehicles, these four-wheel vehicles, as motorcycles. I don't know why, but they do. Now, this is their data, since they commingle their information to all-terrain vehicles and cycles. Okay, there is data for every year. I have a lot of data from starting 2009, moving forward till 2021 is the most recent. So in the state for 2021, statewide, a total of 187 accidents of OHVs. Now, is that commingled with motorcycles?
Motorcycles?
It is.
Okay.
I can't separate that, but that's according to the stats and data by ADOT. Of that 187, 16 were fatal crashes, 123 were injury crashes.
And these are on roads, or these could be
all on roads?
On road, okay.
These are on roads. They don't keep stats. From what I'm told, I may be wrong. Let someone challenge me. I'm open to being educated. Show me the data.
Right.
Okay. 2020, there were 234 accidents. 19 were fatal and 140 were injured. Okay, now these do, like I said, these do not take into account what happens in the forest. Now we know that there's many, many accidents in the forest.
Right.
You mentioned there's rollovers. Now,
Rollers.
when I mentioned that the Consumer Product Safety Commission doesn't certify these on road, they're not saying anything about off road because they were designed for off road. The federal DOT says they belong off highway. That's why they are, the designation is off highway vehicle. So when I asked the question, how are they different? And the answer that I received was the OHVs were designed to take a rollover hit because they have a full cage. You're surrounded. Right. Although we know many, many accidents where people put their arms or legs out and they get injured. You know, during an accident, when you're rolling over, you know, your body's in, but your extremities could go anywhere.
Right.
So they're also made to take a hit of a rock or a tree. So that's an angle type of accident. The reason why they're not certified on road, on paved public roads, is that they're not made to take a forward head-on accident or a T-bone, because that's what you would most likely have in a regular street environment.
Right.
Right. So there's no side door protection because they don't have doors. Right. Okay. And they don't have airbags to protect them. So that's what the difference is. You know, they're designed for one. Now, why some of them, you know, people say, well, Scott, you drive a Jeep. Maybe your vehicle's not certified. Well, it is. Right. It is. And why it's allowed and OHVs are not, go take it up with the Product Safety Commission.
Right. Right.
Okay.
No, those are federally those are subject. That's what I was trying to get at, is like these, it's a specific segment. It's not like you can't take a Jeep on the road or you can't, you know, that's okay. Right. Okay. Now, so go ahead.
I just want to take one more step. Where is it any certified document that it shows that it doesn't belong on a road? Okay. The document is the certificate of orientation. I'm sorry, the certificate of origin that clearly says, give me 1 second. I have it here somewhere. Now, this is an old certificate of origin. The ordinance has more recent data, but this is what it looks like.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And highlighted in yellow, I'm going to read to you. Now, this is an official document.
So this is, comes from the manufacturer.
Comes
like
from the
Polaris,
manufacturer,
for instance. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So this says this vehicle is not intended for and may not be registered for on-road use. Plain and simple.
Right.
Okay.
So so far you got me on, you got me agreeing and nodding my head, but then I want to say, trying to take the other side. Okay, well, the manufacturer says shouldn't be on road. Consumer Protection Agency says shouldn't be on road. Then why does the state of Arizona have a revised statute that says put a decal on it, register it, get some insurance, and do some equipment changes, and you're good to go? All the people in all the residents of Sedona who have these vehicles think that they're safe. So right. Is the state wrong? Are they, you know, how's that? How do you square that? You know? Well,
first of all, you're right. The state, I think they did it in just a few days. They approved it. My understanding that when the bill was passed, it was originally slated for a funeral vehicle. And then I may be wrong in some of the details because I just learned this the other day. There was a striker bill that eliminated all that information about a funeral hearse, whatever it was. I don't know exactly what it was, but they threw in an OHV and they just approved it. There was no real discussion. You know, the same state that approved that also has this document, like we talked about earlier,
Right.
that says clearly, if you're going to put it on the road, you have to certify it and other federal requirements.
That
Now,
the
I told you
vehicle
what the federal
is certified
requirements
for
are.
other federal requirements, which you're saying it's not.
It's not.
Okay.
So I'm not saying anybody's lying. I'm not just saying, I'm saying it's muddy.
It's much. So then what gives, I mean, I was at the Sedona City Council. I listened to the city attorney, Kurt Christensen. So I obviously have a little head knowledge here, but then what gives if the state, even if you're right, which it sounds like you are, certainly at the federal level, at the manufacturer level, at the consumer protection level, if you're right, then the city though is going to be going against a state law. And does the city have authority under revised statutes to go against state law?
Well, according to the advice of my legal counsel, Kurt Christensen, our city attorney, he says it's questionable, but he feels that we are on solid ground
Okay.
because health, safety, and welfare. If we did this because of environmental issues, we're not. But if we did, we'd have a real problem. If we did this because of the noise issue, we're not. And it's questionable. And we weren't doing anything. As a matter of fact, we're still moving forward with an environmental assessment to see if off-highway vehicles or any vehicles in the forest have noise issues and have, dust. And we all know, anyone who's driven out 525 and on those roads in the forest, you could clearly see that there's a problem. This is not that.
Right.
Because there's two other groups that are going to be working with the Forest Service, and there's a whole process. We don't need to jump the gun on that because there's two good groups that are diligently working with the Forest Service to come to some kind of resolution. We're going to provide at our expense. Now, the forest is out of the city limits. We don't have to do this. We're trying to be good neighbors to the people in the forest and say, we're going to fund this and see what kind of results we get.
Okay. I mean, one thing I know that I know because I listened to the city attorney, we said there was statutes that said that the city or local authority can pass an ordinance regarding the control and movement of traffic, which this would be. And you obviously I believe there's a revised statute that said you can't drive an off-highway vehicle in an unsafe manner, which I guess it wouldn't be unsafe for the state, but it would be unsafe for federal. So it does seem like for safety, there's certainly more. The city has more power to control its own destiny than, let's say, noise.
And like I said, this wasn't moving forward until about 2 or 3 months ago. We found out about it.
Okay.
And I understand what you said before. This is a backroom deal or back
door. Yeah, right.
We weren't doing anything. We were just moving forward with our environmental assessment because that's what we could do to help. Once we know about this, how do you unknow about this?
Right.
Okay.
So what do you, let me ask just one question about roads, right? This is another confusion. So we have obviously city roads, but we got two state roads run through the middle of our town. We got 89A and we got 179. Those are state roads. Does the city have jurisdiction over enforcing, safety of vehicles on roads that are in city limits, but that are state roads? Is that a problem or?
Well, we do that now.
Right.
Okay. You don't see DPS enforcing speeding. You see Sedona Police. You don't see DPS. I mean, they could, but they're strapped for manpower. Why would they need to come to an incorporated city?
Right.
Okay. Our police are well trained. We are well staffed, I might add, that we handle those roads as well as our own, We have many other assortment of different police calls that they handle. Speeding. Now we even have an officer or two trained for tractor trailers and their safety. That's on 89A and 179.
Okay. So even though they're state roads, there's enforcement done by the city, right, and you have the right to enforce traffic on the roads that are inside the city limits.
Right. Correct.
Okay. So then another question, there's all this talk obviously about banning these vehicles off roads, whether they're state or city, and everyone's like, I don't think people realize, okay, there's this whole forest. I mean, these vehicles, or people are coming here because they want to ride these vehicles in the forest. They're not coming, they don't come here to go, oh, I'd like to ride down 89A. That's not the reason they come.
Yeah.
So I guess just to put some peace of mind, you're not banning these vehicles from the forest, right? They're just
No, not at all.
okay. They're just not allowed on the. So then we get into what I call a post-ordinance world. Let's just assume that you decide, the city council decides to pass this ordinance, and these vehicles are not allowed on city roads, they're not allowed on 179 or 89A, or maybe some combination, they are and they aren't. Now everyone wants to come because they want to go in the forest, where they used to they traveled on, obviously, the roads of the city to get to the motorized trailheads. What do they do now? What is that world look like in Sedona, where we have this ordinance, but people still want to go in the forest?
Well, what would happen is, and I forget what the exact number is, but there are many states in this country where OHVs are towed in on a trailer.
Okay.
So people, the OHV companies could do what they do in California, by the way. That's I believe that's one of the states where the model is you rent something, okay? They drive you into the forest, and tow an OHV in the back on a trailer, not towed like a tow truck, like on a flatbed. And they set you up that way. For people who have their own, and you see it now, it's very common where you'll see at the Airbnbs, people who come from out of state, down south, up north, they're trailering them because they really can't go over 40 miles an hour. So they're trailering them anyway. So they need to trail them into the forest. Now, this again is where it's a little bit of an issue.
Right, because can the trailheads as currently configured accommodate all these new trailers?
No. Okay. And the trailheads, it's my understanding that the trailheads are sized appropriately for, this is the way that the U.S. Forest Service keeps too much tourism or too much hiking to a limit. So if you can only put 9 cars there, that's maybe 18 or less people, depending on how many are in the car, right? And those people will go into the forest. They never want to expand their parking lots because that would allow too much traffic, right? Pedestrian foot traffic. So there's just so much room to do that. Okay, now it would be great. We're looking, personally, I'm looking and hoping that someday the Forest Service will accommodate us to put a bigger parking lot for the Cathedral Rock Trailhead and the eliminate the Back of Beyond Trailhead, which is very limited. Right. But you know, the way this city was constructed many, many years ago, there weren't houses where the trailheads are. The fact that you in order to get to a trailhead, you have to now drive through neighborhoods. Yes. Only a few that you don't have to. Broken Arrow, Morgan Road is another one. Okay. Right. But when those trailheads were constructed, there were virtually no houses there, so it's not a big deal. Yes. Okay. I can go into a whole nother topic of an agreement, Amendment 12, that talked about not having trailheads in neighborhoods. It never happened. But to get back to where we're going now about this Cathedral Rock Trailhead, if they want to build a trailhead on 179 with entrance and exits right on 179, just as you cross the city limits, they could put a trailhead for parking, a trailhead for OHV trailers, a trailhead, and put enough in there for that you have a trailhead for equestrian. Okay, they could do that if they chose to, and they choose not to. And that would then eliminate the Back of Beyond trailhead, and we wouldn't have as much problems with walking traffic and regular pedestrian traffic or sedan traffic. But
so again, is the Forest Service going to say to you, hey, if you're doing this, it puts us in a bad spot because we're going to have to do all these studies and environmental impacts to reconfigure all the trailheads? Give us time, or it just hasn't gotten there yet because the ordinance hasn't even been passed yet,
right?
or no one knows
It,
if it will be.
it hasn't gotten there, like you said, but also for the fact that I can't say what they're going to say.
Right.
So I know that they have their own massive amount of red tape. They have NEPA studies and other kind of studies. And it's my understanding that for the area of 525 and 152C, they did whatever they did there to allow OHV traffic without a NEPA study
Mm.
and without residential input.
Oh, wow.
They didn't do public outreach, which, according to their guidelines, they're supposed to
Yeah,
do.
there's federal law that says when you do stuff like that, you have to do public input. Yeah.
Right, but I'm told that they feel that they're on solid ground, that there's reasons, and I don't remember what the reasons were, to be fair,
Okay.
okay, that they were okay to do it,
Okay.
but yet they don't do it for anything else. So whatever the criteria was for the OHVs to go doing what they're doing and degrading the Forest Service the way it does, they feel that they're on solid ground, and then it's been very interesting ever since.
Okay. So beyond the Forest Service, then there's just this concept of, and maybe this is something you know you can't solve every problem. I understand that, but there's going to be then more trailers in Sedona. So now we got trailers running around, and who knows what that does. Obviously, I'm sure you've thought of that, or do you feel like I can't predict? I got to solve the safety issue. I can't predict how the trailers are going to impact the town.
Well, what was interesting, I appreciate the public comment of our council meetings. And we had so many people that we normally do a 3-minute public comment. I cut it down to 2 minutes.
Right.
We got the gist of what was being said. And we have these OHV companies that are treating their employees great, that are paying them a good wage, not a living wage, but a good wage, so better. That impressed a lot upon me. So aside from the fact that they're bringing us something that we don't really want because of the environmental impacts, they're good business owners. They do good things. I'm trying to come up with a way with some other team members in the city of a place that we could possibly use to park trailers. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, but it's because it's outside the city limits. But I'm going to look to do what I can to work with them as a gesture of good faith.
Okay.
Do I have to do that? No. But morally, I want to try to do that as best I can because I want these businesses to stay in our city.
Right.
I just
So if you can keep the ATV. So first of all, a lot of these vehicles are private. So I mean, we shouldn't be picking just on the rental companies because a lot of the traffic isn't even rentals. But to the extent you want to, don't obviously there's going to be some impact on these rental companies. So you're saying you want to help alleviate the impact by maybe putting some area where there can be trailering outside the city. And do you? I mean, I've heard it was near the wastewater plant. I don't know if that's the case or not. If that's something you're talking about, or
well, we're looking for some land out west. Now,
okay.
what's interesting, I didn't have this information for any of the past meetings. I received it about an hour ago. I understand that there's 7 lots on the Forest Service already, staging areas. I forgot about that bit of information, that they could park 7 or 8 trailers there, or 6 or 7. I don't know. I've never been there, so I don't know, but just what I've been told. So I'm hoping that the Forest Service will work with us, and that would be their contribution to working together. But nothing's in stone yet. This is all just, coming to the table and negotiating and working with the OHV companies, because I certainly don't want to put a business out of business.
Right.
I don't want to see dedicated employees lose their job.
Sure. Okay.
That's not what this is about. How, like I said before, how do you unknow what you now know?
Right.
Right. And to give you a little bit of information, well, you already know it. You were at all these meetings.
Yeah.
I had 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting with the GSRC and Tread Lightly.
Which is this collaborative that's trying to work on solutions for OHVs.
Right.
Yeah.
So they were invited to a private meeting. And I shared this information with them of the safety issues. And I said, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm fallible. I make mistakes. I think I've done my homework. I think I'm right. I think I'm on solid ground, as does my city attorney. Tell me if I'm wrong. You were there,
Yes.
not a word,
No.
not a word. I said the same thing last Tuesday at the city council meeting. Okay. Nobody was disputing it. They all said it's okay. They're a great place to work. They're good people. I get that.
I mean, some people said it was unconstitutional, but I don't know where they were exactly how, but they
I'm
did
not
say
gonna,
that.
yeah, I'm not going to opine on that because I'm not a constitutionalist. I don't know. But if it turns out to be, okay, let's discuss that.
Right.
But when it comes down to safety, to me, how do you work on that? When no one's, again, putting them out of business, they just have to change their business model. So I
Right.
like
So that's it's basically no one's putting them out of the business or just changing a business model where people don't pick up the UTVs at the rental counter and drive to the motorized trail. They have to now get the motorized vehicle to the trail. So it's that just that piece of getting the vehicle to the trail that's different, and that's how their business model has to change. But otherwise, they're fully in business if they, but they have to obviously make revenue, and it has to be enough volume for them.
Of course, no, I get that. But again, this is not a new concept.
Right. Other state. So do you know how many other states don't allow?
I didn't prep for that.
Yeah,
I've been
I think it's like 20, yeah, something like 25 or 30 or.
well, it is.
Yeah.
And it's actually in the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay. One of our counselors did some research on that, and it's clear that not every state requires it, but most states do require some form of trailer.
Okay. So it's a viable business model in other states that don't.
It is.
Okay. Let me ask you two more questions because I want to wrap it up. I know you take first. Thank you for your time, but I also know we got to keep these things within a certain time frame. So two quick, maybe not quick, but two more questions. One is Sedona residents, right? There are these Sedona residents who own these UTVs sitting in their garage and they like never got a trailer because why? I don't need to. I can go out on the road. So what about them? Are they going to say, hey, I can't do them a favor and say you guys are okay? Or can they get some sort of break and some sort of.
Well, we can't, I don't know how you would fairly treat one group over the other.
Right.
And what we're doing, if somebody knows how to do that, or if the OHV rental companies would agree to that, well, we still have them on. The problem is they're unsafe on the roads. So as much as I would like to do something, if any of the residents, and I've been contacted by several, and my answer to them is, show me that your vehicle is safe.
Right.
No I get crickets, no comments. So, and I drove past the house today and they had a big OHV in the garage. They don't have room for a trailer.
Right.
I was thinking, well, could they put a trailer in the garage with the OHV on top of it? It wouldn't fit. I don't know what the answer is. I would love to have an answer for them. And if we are negotiating and trying to move forward with something that works, there's no deadline that we have to, it's not in stone that we have to pass this ordinance. There's discussion about, 30 days, 60 days after a June meeting. If we're coming to a good resolution, working in good faith does not have a cut zone where, the guillotine drops and we're looking to hurt people.
Okay, there's not like it's like, okay, on this date at midnight, the ordinance passes. No, it's
not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And quite honestly, there's 7 of us on city council. They may not approve this.
Sure. Yeah, everyone has a different opinion.
Everybody has different opinions, and I don't fault any of them if they don't agree with this, but they all know that it's a matter of safety and it's a matter of, this now. What do you do with it? If there's an accident, are we then liable?
Right. Okay, one more question and then we're going to wrap it up. And it's sort of a question, a self-serving question. I get one self-serving question. And it's an OHV question, but it's not really part of the ordinance. And it's a question of, there have been discussions and not everyone agrees, but other discussions before this safety ordinance was bubbling up about maybe some sort of permitting system. The Forest Service has a great website called recreation.gov where you just go in there and go, okay, I want to get a permit and I want to this day and in this time. And, to manage the volume of these OHVs in the forest, it just seems like it would be an easy thing to do to monitor and track and manage this volume through a permitting system. And perhaps the Forest Service could charge a permit fee and use some of those proceeds for conservation, for education, enforcement, things like that. Just so, again, not part of the ordinance, but is part of how to, if the ordinance doesn't pass, or maybe if it does, any views that you'd be okay sharing on how do you feel about an electronic permitting system to manage OHV volume?
Well, keep in mind, that's out of the city limits.
Right. It's a Forest Service decision.
It's a Forest Service decision. I think that would go a long way to help with the problem. And that would even help with the rental OHVs, where they might have only 20, 30, put a number. It doesn't make a difference to me. It's what they need for their volume. Each company would have a set limit, and then they would know where they stand. So it gives them, I think, a view to the future to know what their model will be. Again, once they're trailered out into the forest.
Right.
But it would also help with the individual owners, so that they know, hey, I've got a permit, I'm good to go. I have free reign once I trailer my vehicle to a safe staging area.
Right.
I think that would be really good.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that, there are, like we mentioned, there's two groups that are working together, but differently with the Forest Service. I'm hoping that could be one of the ways to solve some of the problem and mitigate the damage in our forest.
Okay. Well, Mayor Jablow, thank you very much for your time. We're all going to be, I know I am, I'm going to be following this very carefully, and we'll see, I'm sure everyone else is watching is as well. And we'll just see how this evolves, and hopefully we can have another conversation as we get closer to decision-making time. So thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate that call. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.